One of the people mentioned there is Rory Stewart. He was apparently in MI6, Martin. What would you know about this? Because he says he wasn't, and but he would have to say that, wouldn't he?
He would say that, wouldn't he? That's all I can say about that.
But
listen,
is it okay to say? Is it okay to lie and say I wasn't in MI6 when I was?
Listen, if you're in that world, Tony, you're either a paid officer of MI6, or you could be what's called an agent of influence. You just basically schmooze with them, and they schmooze with you and tell you things that they'd like you to do, and you go, yes, I can help you.
Anyway, he's denied having anything to do with MI6, but I tracked down, with a little bit of help, a chap who'd been very, very close to Rory Stewart, and his name's Stephen Landrigan. In fact, he lived right next door to him in Kabul, and he wasn't very impressed.
The quick history is that when it was built, it was out in the country.
This is a fort where they both lived, just outside Kabul.
It was about 4 or 5 miles away. This was out a place where it was good hunting. There was wetlands nearby. And the king at the time, Abdurrahman, built himself a palace at the top of a hill, and this where the Kali Noborjah was built down below it, and his wazir lived there.
Okay, so how old is the place?
1880. About 1880 is what architectural historians generally accept.
And it was a kind of quadrangle with various people, aid workers, etc., living there. What did Rory do? Because I understand he kind of built on it, which is a bit peculiar since he's renting the property. He then also spent money improving the place. What did he do?
We all put in our own lighting and, in some cases, water and so on like that. You had to do it. This place was a mud brick fort, 2 or 3 stories high and very, very elegant and very much of another age, but not a place for modern living. So, but what Rory did was he then built like a triumphal arch attached to the front of the main entrance into the courtyard. He built a gatehouse right out of Disney at the edge of the property that everybody had to come through. He built a kiln for his pottery work, so it was never really used in a great amount because most of the pottery was done, as I say, a half hour north. And then there was a cement brick house on the property that belonged to a relative of the woman who claimed to own the fort. And so without contacting those people, he doubled the size of the house, clad it in mud bricks, and made it look very, very old. It's actually quite nice. I mean, I have to say one thing about Turquoise Mountain, they did a good job. And then when the family found out what was happening to their house, they raised noise, and I think Rory paid them quite a bit. So what I'm saying, the overall picture is Rory spent a lot of money, donor money, on aggrandizing his position by building a viceroy-style mansion in Kabul, which was perfect for the photo ops, which was good because every glossy magazine in Britain seemed to be coming through there on a regular basis to photograph Rory in situ. Rory does everything through third parties. Rory did not go up to these people and say, you have to leave. But he engineered a situation where other people went and did that, and Rory ultimately was the beneficiary. In both cases, these were very impoverished Hazara Afghan families who lived just adjacent to our main courtyard. Rory wanted their territory because as his staff increased, he needed more place to put people. In fact, one time we were walking in front of the rooms I had. We're up on the second level overlooking one of these families, and it says, how do we know for sure that Mahbouba owns this? Mahbouba is the widow of the man who had owned the place. And I said, well, you need to find out. But Roy he said, I must have that land. But there were people down there. They were tending their cow. They were drawing water from the well, which took 42 pulls on the rope. It was a family, and Rory didn't see them. He wanted that land, and that's all there was to it. Rory's sense of entitlement was second to none, and it was very, very evident in that. And in almost everything else he did, there was no consequences to what he said or did because it was Rory. He could do what he wanted. I was in the fort from about 2005 to 2008. Rory came in I think it was May of 2006. I think that was it. And then I left. He was still there when I left. So we overlapped about 2.5 years.
And what's your memory of him as a person?
I thought of him as a cross between Peter Pan and Uriah Heep. This is a man who was flitting around, feeling very self-important at all times, always engaged in self-mythologizing. But a man who would not listen. He loved an audience, but he was not a listener. And he was always right, and he was always grand. And just the kind of person you run away from.
I mean, this is a very important time for Afghanistan. I would have thought there would have been some sort of press coverage of Rory, his activities there. Was there any? Was there any interest?
Oh, what? Every week he had somebody coming out. He obviously had a PR firm. Somebody has suggested that it's Bell Pottinger, the discredited firm. I don't know that. But yes, there was, you name it, particularly the glossy magazines, not just British, it was the American. Smithsonian was out. Time got him to write some pieces, but Vanity Fair, I don't know if it was, I shouldn't say that, I don't know that, but several others. There were dozens of them. What was most amazing about it, Tony, was that every article seemed to follow the same format. It was almost as if somebody had given the writers, points. These need to be covered. I don't know if that happened, but that you couldn't read these, many dozens of articles without wondering who's behind this. It was even true, not just the glossies. I mean, there was some of the British newspapers. I don't want to bother mentioning names, but there was some of the articles that we read followed just right along the line. And the worst thing was every single one of them completely promoted Rory's bio as he would print it in the front of the books that he published. But it's bogus, and nobody checked it. And
what was bogus about his biography?
Well, I mean, this is nothing I have personal connection. I personally have not investigated it, but Ian Parker of the New Yorker did so in 2015 and found that Rory's claim to have been part of the Black Watch Regiment was apparently some summer program for young people. That is much vaunted time as a tutor to the Princes Harry and William was only for 2 weeks one summer. I'm not sure if Ian Parker did this, but a man named Craig Murray, who was once a British ambassador to neighboring Uzbekistan, claimed that Rory was MI6. I don't know that myself. And I'm trying to think what's the other one. Anyway, it was that kind of thing. It was always Rory promoting himself, but nobody ever checked him. Nobody checked the facts. Nobody asked any hard questions of Rory. That drove me crazy.
Okay. Do you think he'd make a good Prime Minister?
Well, if Britain wants to have the Trump experience, they should vote for him. But this is a man who is not able to speak the truth. He's about promoting his image, his ambitions. He's not completely stupid. I'm sure he'll do some things right. But would I vote for him? No. I'm not in one party or the other in terms of British politics, but I would not want a man quite so dishonest at the top of my country.
He's also denied ever being involved in MI6, but some have said that actually if you are involved in MI6, that was what you have to say.
That may well be. I don't have a clue. I don't know anything about MI6.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you don't have to deny it. You can just leave it in a way that creates the perfect mystique, doesn't it? If you neither confirm nor deny.
Rory was pretty good at that and other things. If Rory didn't want to discuss something, he would turn around and walk away. And that happened to me a couple of times. It happened to other people. I remember there was one, it was told to me by a man from Nepal. Rory had talked about having walked across Asia and part of Nepal, and the Nepali gentleman said he'd love to know more about the route that Rory took because it was virtually impossible for a person to have walked across it. And this was at the Asia Foundation at a dinner reception, and Rory didn't answer. He just turned around and walked away. That's our Rory. So, never apologize, never explain.
Okay, Stephen, thanks very much for joining us.
Okay, all the best.
So that's Stephen Landrigan, who lived next door to Rory Stewart for a couple of years in Kabul, Martin. It sounds to me like he's kind of made up a mythological version of himself, and also the mass media have helped actually puff that up without asking questions.
Well, in many ways, he's a self-publicist in the way that political figures often are. There's nothing there that surprises me about it.
I mean, from what we've just heard there, from what we've just heard there, I mean, for example, using donor money to build himself a little palace as a backdrop for media shots doesn't sound like a very good development secretary, even. international development secretary.
Listen, he's basically someone who has, made a big deal out of how, well connected he is in the right circles. He knows Princes William and Harry, etc., etc. So that's what he is.
Thanks to our guest, former leader of the Lib Dem group on Bristol City Council, it's Councillor for Cottam, Anthony Negus. Join me after the US-owned Comcast News at 7.